I'm a big fan of it's just like they used to tell me when I started in the 12 steps about relationships. They're like, look, dude, you don't need to go find the right person. You need to be the right person. And I'm like, okay, so how do I do that?
Hello and welcome to my podcast, Show Up. My name is Daryl Dittmer. As someone who built financial freedom from scratch, I understand what's possible, as there was a time when I thought I had only a life of mediocrity ahead of me. Drinking, drugs, and zero confidence plagued me. The one thing that changed my life is when I decided to do things differently and give success a chance. And I don't just mean financial success, I mean life success. I started to show up to my life and my career, and one step after another provided me the life I never thought possible. At any age, life begins to change when you start to show up. Welcome to my podcast.
Today I'm joined by Carla Royal. Carla has a master's in education, is a certified integral master coach with a singular focus, helping high-performing entrepreneurs and founders regain their internal steadiness so that success no longer costs them peace. With over a decade as a licensed psychotherapist and nearly 15 years as a professional coach, Carla bridges advanced psychology and somatic science with a rare gift for precision and calm. Welcome, Carla. So great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Daryl.
Thank you. You know, we were talking a little bit before we hit record, and I'm starting to dip my big toe or maybe my little toe in the coaching arena, which I'm very excited about. And you've obviously been working with people in coaching for a long, long time, which I think is the coolest thing. And we'll get into some of your writing and that sort of thing later. But I have to say, I applaud everything that I investigated about you and your work and the things that you're doing. And I think it's really, really cool.
Thank you, Daryl. I feel the same about you. I listened to several of your podcast episodes and read your book, your first book, and really impressed with what you're up to. And I think the theme that came across to me so clearly about you is you are here to help. You really want to serve and help people. And we need more of that. And I appreciate that about you so much. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And likewise, it's just I have this belief, and I was helped by mentors as you read in the book, and just wonderful humans, and they were giving it away, and they didn't want anything in return. They were just giving it away and sharing their wisdom, and that saved me. It saved my life, I believe. Kept me from going down a much darker place. So whatever I can do to pay that forward, happy to do, and grateful that you're doing that also. Yeah. So we'll jump into the question that I love to ask at the beginning, which, you know, just sort of sets the stage for our entire conversation. But if you would, Carla, tell me about an event or a time in your life that caused you to show up for your life in a different way.
There have been many, Daryl, but I would have to say that probably one of the most powerful things, and it wasn't a one time, it happened in a moment, but it had long-term implications, and it was an unfolding over many years. And I would say that was the death of my mother. I was 36 at the time, and she died of cancer, and it just absolutely undid me. And I had a very difficult childhood, a lot of trauma. My mother was an alcoholic. I adored her. She was not a mean alcoholic. She was a depressed alcoholic, and I knew she loved me, but it was very complicated, and other things in the family, a lot of chaos and trauma. And so when she died, somehow it just was an unmooring for me. It absolutely unmoored me. And the thing about it for me was that I watched my brilliant, beautiful, creative mother just kind of snuff her life out over a matter of years. She was a functioning alcoholic. She went to work every day. She was very much into the arts and culture of my hometown, which is Augusta, Georgia. And she brought the opera and the symphony and musicals to Augusta that didn't have it before. And then every night she was drinking to blackout. And so it was this, and I was sort of caring for her emotionally. And I watched her just snuff her light out over many years. And at that point when she died, I went into complete collapse for about 4 years. I started drinking heavily, sometimes to blackout and so forth. And it ended in a complete and utter undoing. And when I sort of woke up from that, I realized that I did not want to go out like my mother. I either wanted to go ahead and die, or I wanted to fully engage and live. And that was a turning point when I sort of had that big, in 12-step meetings, it's you've hit your bottom. I hit a very deep, very bad, very messy bottom. And when I kind of woke up from that, I was like, I want to live and I want to do something differently here. And so I've got to figure out what that is. Now, I was a psychotherapist at that time. I started psychotherapy when I was in 1990. And I was helping people, but I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted. And after this, I decided I'm going to go as deep as I can in the interior world of people, and I'm going to figure this thing out. And so that was really, I think, that I would say that was probably the biggest turning point of my life. And that's it in a nutshell, Daryl.
Yeah, I'm sure there's just reverberations from that go everywhere in life. And that hit me really hard because my mom died when I was 35, and it was cancer. And my mom was, she was, I would just say, not really a happy person. And I think she came from a significant amount of dysfunction and was always just searching and never really finding that peace or that calm or that contentment. And it was really, that's probably what affected me the most when she died, was that she was not able to be fulfilled. Is that something that hit you as well with your mom?
Oh, absolutely. Just the fact that with all of her brilliance and creativity and intelligence, that she just snuffed herself out over years with the alcohol and the depression. And I just couldn't believe that someone that bright with that much light would do that. And I could see in myself that I was going to do that too, if I didn't make a different decision and figure some things out. It took me years, Daryl, to figure some things out. It really took me years of figuring things out. And to your point, with mentors, with therapists, with coaches, I often say that my guys that I work with in my coaching business, they are real go-getters. They are after it, and they are successful, and they go out after it with the grit. You talk about grit a lot. You're from reading your book, you're like one of the grittiest people ever. And they have that grit and to succeed in their exterior life. The grit that I've had in my life is to succeed in my interior life. If that makes sense. That's my zone of genius. That's where I like to play. And that's the wisdom that I bring to my clients. And that's where I went for those years. And I'm frankly, like you, Daryl, I'm still there. I'm still doing that work of healing, of understanding myself, and how human beings are in the world, and how they react and how they respond, and what brings them meaning and so forth. So yes, to watch my mother, and I read in your book how it was so painful for you when your mother died. I remember reading that. And to watch someone you love so much who is this beautiful person, and to watch them kind of snuff out instead of going out thriving.
Difficult.
Very.
Yeah, really, really difficult. And thank you for sharing that part of you, because to me, and just like you, I can teach people how to make money. I can teach people how to, have success out there, all that kind of thing. I'll beat them over the head with, here's what you have to do, because that's what happened to me. And it worked, but it worked for that part of my life, which is a very thin layer of my life. It's, I could make money, all that sort of thing, and great. Okay, cool. But are you there? And I'm saying this to me, Daryl, are you content? Are you fulfilled? And for much of that time, the answer was no, because so much of my time was going into that outer success.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love the journey, the expansion and the wonder and the exploration and everything that goes into, that discovery. But the very interesting part is, and you mention it in some of your writing, and you know what, let me just pull this up real quick because it's very apropos to what we're talking about. So this is in The Epidemic of Hiding, which I loved. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And it says, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I've gone against the grain of what my family, religion, and culture expected and even demanded. I'm freer and happier as a result, but it's difficult. And I was there. I was handed this box, right? Here's your stuff you're allowed to believe. It sounds like you had that too, but you've broken away, which I have as well. And I'd love to talk about that.
Oh yeah, I did read about some of your spiritual journey, and the spiritual journey I've been on has been pretty profound as well, Daryl. And I grew up. I didn't actually grow up in this family. I actually ended up in this world because my family was so messed up that they sent me to a private Christian high school, grammar school. It wasn't grammar school. I guess I started there at 8th grade. And because I was struggling a lot. And what I really appreciated about that was that it gave me a black and white box to be safe in for a while. And I absolutely needed that because there were no boundaries in my family. It was just, just everybody for themselves kind of thing. And so the religion of that particular religion was very helpful to me as a child. I just stayed in it a little too long. And for a very long time, I stayed in it because it was safe. And I think that's what people love about black and white thinking. Our brains love black and white thinking. They love it. It loves it because our brain's number one priority is to keep us alive and to keep us safe. And so when there's no doubt, no gray, that feels safe to our bodies, to our brains. And so, of course, we love the black and white, either or situations. And to break out of that and have a greater perspective, a wider perspective, and to see more gray, and to say, like you say so much in your book, Daryl, I don't have all the answers, and what I believe today, I do believe will shift in another year or 2 or 5 or 10. And so I'm not attached to it in the same way I was when I was younger. And so it has been quite a journey for me to sort of figure this out and to figure out, like you, if I can understand God, then it's probably not God. You say something similar to that in your book. If I can understand God, then I don't think that's actually God, but something bigger than me, something beyond me, something other than human. And I can't tell you exactly what that is, but it's very, very important to me. And I don't feel alone in the work that I do or in the life that I live. But I can't exactly describe that to you either.
Right. No, and I can't either. People say to me, in where I live now in North Georgia, what church do you go to? And like, well, I don't. And, that's not always, it's not always what they want to hear. But, then I'll quote something from the Bible and say, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. And that doesn't have to be a church. It can be any sort of, gathering. And I carry God. I call God God. It's not a definition. It's just a name because I don't have another one.
Right.
I don't want to call him, Bob or Sandra or something like that.
Right.
So God is God, but I think one of the interesting things to me, and you touched on it, was it just keeps, whatever that belief is at this moment, just keeps expanding and changing, and I love that about my belief system because I don't have to be hemmed in.
Right.
I don't have to think, oh man, if I do that, I'm going to hell. And that's what I was saddled with when I was a kid. And that's just not a cool place to be.
No.
Right? The fear and the guilt.
Yes. And there's so much more freedom in the way that you're believing. And that said, I can also understand that there are people who, like me at that time when I was younger, really needed that, exactly what it was. And, when I work with my clients, I'm never trying to get them to believe like I believe. If they're Christians, I want to fully support them to be the very best Christians they can be. If they're not, I want to support them to be the very best, whatever they are, to be the very best and to live their potential, whatever that may be, because this is my path. Your path is different from my path. You have different needs than I have. And so if that works for people, I am not here to try to dismantle that in any way. I just want to help you be as full and embodied in that as you can be, if that makes sense.
100%. And I think that's really beautifully said, because, and one thing that I'm clear as a bell on is I am not in charge of anyone else's journey.
Right.
The only one I have any ability to do something about is my own. And
that's right.
My attitude and my effort, right? I mean, those are the things that I can contribute to the mix. As far as everybody else on the planet goes, look, believe whatever it is you believe, and all I say is just ensure that it's working. Just
Right.
ensure that it's working, right?
Yeah. And are you being kind to people around you? Are you caring for people around you? In your words, are you serving people around you?
Right. Absolutely. And I believe that we can move ourselves to a point. We can do this anytime we want. And I think this is a great healing exercise too, is for whatever period of time, whether it's a day or a minute or 5 minutes or 10 years or whatever it is, spend some time helping other people feel good. Smile at the person who's checking you out at the store, strike up a conversation at the gas station. You might change a life. And that's one of the things I try to do, just because I want everybody to have a great day. And I'm not gonna go crazy with it, but it's the very simple little things, I think, that really help people. I love it when somebody makes eye contact and smiles at me, and I can smile back at them, and nothing has to be said, maybe a little nod or something, and we go about our day. But that's healing.
Yes, I agree. It's an exchange. It's a connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there were a couple other things that I highlighted from your writing. One, I can't read my writing, so I'm going to read this other one.
Okay.
So, and I love this, and it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about, but I want to talk about, filling ourselves up and helping people fill themselves up. So this is a quote: "Most everyone I encounter is heavily guarded. No wonder we live in an epidemic of loneliness. We become excruciatingly disconnected and separate. We try all manner of things to fill the void left by our disconnections, chasing money, success, legacy, power, to utter exhaustion and dissatisfaction. Alcohol, food, sex, drugs, endless consumption. Nothing satisfies. Everything leaves us emptier." And I'd love to talk about what fills us.
Yeah, I I would love to talk about it too. I think that there are probably some similar things for all of us, and then probably some different things. But just what you were saying about how you love in the supermarket when someone makes eye contact with you, I think one of the things that we long for and that fills us is connection. And I think one of the problems we're seeing in our country and in the world is how incredibly disconnected we've gotten from ourselves, from each other, and from nature, from the earth, and from maybe from God too. And I think that what we long for, and we're social creatures. We are here to be in community. That's how we're built. We're like a pack of dogs, that a puppy pack, we just want to be together. We need to be together, and we've gotten so disconnected. And I think that disconnection has, honestly, to be honest with you, I'm not sure where it started, but I would say that we're incredibly disconnected from ourselves. And in so doing, we then, how do we connect? How do I connect to you if I'm not connected to myself? How do I connect to the earth if I'm not connected to myself? And I think that what's needed is for us to learn how to connect to ourselves again, but not just to ourselves, to one another. I find, and you may too, being Daryl in the mountains of North Georgia. I'm in the mountains of North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and I find great healing and connection in the woods that surround me. I'm surrounded by woods. I go out in those woods every single day. And when the ticks aren't too bad, I'm lying down on the earth and just like giving my burdens to the earth is sort of how it feels. And connecting to the fact that it's not all up to me. It's not all up to me. And that I do have support, even if it's just literally the earth underneath my feet. Even that is support, or the gravity that keeps me in this chair, or the life force that's flowing through me, or this breath that I'm not breathing, but that's breathing me. When I connect to that, and then I connect to the parts of me that I have, you might say, disowned, then as I come back to myself, I'm able then to connect. I think connection is a huge piece of what people are looking for. People want to be loved, but if I'm only loved because I'm successful, if I'm only loved because I'm making money, which is what a lot of my clients feel on some level, is they're successful, they're making all the money, and they're still not feeling the love or the belonging that they thought, or the fulfillment that they thought that they would. And it can be a bit of a shock when you're incredibly successful and you thought that was how you're going to, because our culture tells us that's what's important. And so we've believed it. We've been bombarded with it all of our lives. We believe it, especially men, because men are supposed to go out there and make the money and make the big wave and the big success. And when they do, and they still are feeling so disconnected, I think it can be devastating and lonely. It's lonely at the top, but then they can't say anything about it because that would look weak, or that would look, like they might have to pull back, and they don't want to pull back. And so it's kind of a shit show. I don't know if we can say that on this show, but
Sure we can.
okay.
No, that's 100%, Carla. I couldn't agree more, and I've done it. I've been there. I've had physical things come up because of that chasing, constant chasing,
Yeah.
and lack of real connection. And so I understand 100%, and I agree 100%. And I do believe that, I'm a big fan of it. Just like they used to tell me when I started in the 12 steps about relationships, they're like, look, dude, you don't need to go find the right person. You need to be the right person. And I'm like, okay, so how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part to figure out. But like you were saying, and it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like the daily things that we do for ourselves. And I have my little regimen that I do every day. And I shouldn't say regimen because it equates to freedom. It
Right.
equates to opening.
Yes.
But it is, it's the meditation and the breath work and the exercise and, all of those things. And the woods, we're surrounded by woods as well. And, we're fortunate to be able to look over mountains and it's breathtaking. And it gives me another glance at what I choose to call God, because it's this unbridled beauty that I had nothing to do with. It's just a
Mhm.
gift
Mhm.
that I was handed.
Yeah, and I call instead of regimen, I don't like that word because I don't like the word discipline. I don't like discipline. So I have to find other ways to get there. And ritual is a word that I love. So
Mm.
I have my rituals, much like you're talking about. But I think it's more. My experience has been that there are so many people who come to see me who have all the tools, all the regimens, all the rituals, all the, they're all into optimization of everything. And they know all the things they need to do. And in some cases, they're doing the things they need to do. And yet they're still not able to make the changes or transform or feel the peace or the fulfillment that they want to feel. And my discovery has been through my own personal work and my professional work is that there are often some some leftover things, some old survival patterns in us that we don't even know are running us. And if we don't discover what those are and help those parts of us that are in those survival skills kind of update those survival skills, and they're going to keep running in the background. I remember a client telling me, I look forward to the day that I am no longer, I look forward to the day that I no longer have to be angry or frightened in order to be successful. The anger and the fear were driving the success because they kept thinking if they are successful, if they're successful, if they're successful, that they would not have to be so afraid. But that was driving them. And so they had to understand where that came from, why that was there, and readjust, if you will, or update that operating system, if you will. And that's really the work that I do, is that deeper work. There are a lot of coaches out there who do the whole mindset and the tools, which I think is fantastic. But when those things aren't working, that's when those people come to me because I do that much deeper work. And that work, as you know, Daryl, is not for the faint of heart. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to be able to look at yourself that clearly and see yourself that clearly and deal with that those old survival patterns. And they don't give up easily because we want to survive. And so we have to help that system understand that there are other ways to survive that will work even better than this.
Right. And I think that's a difficult thing to let go of that tether, right? Because we don't know what's on the other side. And when I was 19 and I was just getting into recovery and sober and all that sort of thing, and I'm like, man, this sucks. I'm not even old enough to drink, and here I am. But it was the greatest gift I was ever given because it allowed me to start to crack myself open. And I had to crack myself open. I had to allow myself to cry and to sob and to feel that guilt and that shame and all of those things. And my mom's been gone for a long time. My dad's been gone for 14 years now. But I'll sit out on the deck sometimes and, I'll get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning and just look at the stars and just kind of take it all in. And I'll start thinking about my parents and then I'll start talking to them and we're sort of communing. And then I just start bawling.
Yeah.
And it's the most wonderful experience because I haven't lost them.
Yeah.
They're still there.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing. That's what, when you were talking.
Well, and you're allowing for that connection.
Right.
We go back to connection. How many people just block that out and no, it's too painful, or I don't want to feel that. And you allow for that. And that is what gives you that sense of connection and satisfaction or fulfillment or joy, even though you miss them and are crying. And I think it takes a lot of courage. And, men in particular are taught from the get-go, you don't cry. You don't cry. Suck it up, man. And I think it's a real disservice to men, because tears are healing and they're empowering, actually, as you've experienced. But you had an operating system when you were 19 or 18, those years in high school, of how you coped was through your addiction. And you didn't have to, but you chose to update that survive. It was doing a service for you. It actually really was doing a service for you, but it was also harming you in ways that you didn't want to be harmed. So you had to update that operating system. But you first had, now in your case, the operating system that was running you, that survival, was so clear, you couldn't miss it. Mm-hmm. You couldn't miss it. And everybody was kind of pointing to it. It was very, very obvious. But for a lot of people, the survival patterns that are running them are not so obvious. And in fact, some of the survival patterns that are running people are applauded in this culture. You grind yourself until you can't walk, until you can't move. You just grind, the grind culture. You just become so stoic that you never show any emotion, even though you may have a heart attack early because you're keeping everything inside. So the culture applauds certain survival patterns that a lot of my guys have internalized, and it doesn't even feel safe to address it. It doesn't even feel safe to look at it. They don't even want to look at it. They may not even be aware it's there. So it can get really tricky. It can get very, very tricky because it's not so apparent. And of course, you had some of that too as you got older.
Right, for sure. Yeah, just those hurdles of, and because I was 19, 18, 19, getting into recovery, and number one, I didn't know how to be in recovery or be sober, but number two, I didn't know how to live. I was just a kid. So I'm like, okay, let's figure all this stuff out at the same time, or at least, attempt my best attempt. And it's been a great ride, but I appreciate you talking about that, because I do believe that it's like taboo for men to feel.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, whoever's listening, who's a man, and believe me, I've done the man stuff, the sort of proverbial man stuff. And I like this way a lot better, because you can have both. You can go hard, but you can learn how to rest.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
We can find that middle ground where we're not hanging up success. Maybe we're just looking at it differently and allowing ourselves to respond to ourselves differently.
Yeah. And I think that then you can go out there and produce, and do the things you want to do from a very different state and in a very different way. It's going to feel better to you. It's going to be a little less angsty. It's going to feel a little bit easier. Not that it won't be challenging. Of course, it'll be challenging. You want a challenge. Challenge is good. Stress is good. A balance, not too much stress, but stress is a good thing, right? It keeps us on our toes. So it's not that we're not looking for that, but maybe some balance. One of the things that honors me more than anything, Daryl, is that my guys, I call them my guys, the men who, my clients whom I love, they feel so safe with me that they reveal things that they've never revealed to anyone, and oftentimes in tears. And I just can't tell you how honored I am when that happens, because to me, that is like so much courage and strength when that happens and they're able to be vulnerable, because there's so few places they believe and feel that they can be vulnerable. And I think, again, this culture and social media, and the whole influencer guru thing sets them up to not be able to be a real human being we're messy. Humanity is messy. It's messy, and that's okay. And there's actually some beauty in the mess if we can pause long enough to recognize that and accept that about ourselves.
100% agree. I believe that, it's the chaos and the harmony sit side by side,
Yeah.
and both are okay to, to be in from time to time. It's the nature of life.
It
And like you
is.
said, it's just messy, and that's completely cool. But
Yeah.
I think we try to hide from the mess
Yeah.
and shelter ourselves from the mess. But sometimes, I was saying this to someone the other day. I said, that how do you find out what's inside the hurricane? Well, you take a plane and you fly it into the middle of the hurricane,
Right. Right.
and you'll get all the measurements you need and find out what's going on in the hurricane. Same with us. We just go into it. Don't
Yeah.
just.
And I think for me, one of the wonderful things about nature is that when I go into nature, which I do every day, like you, I see it. I see the decay. I see, the shedding. I see the 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 shit on the ground that turns into that which fertilizes the tree. I mean, it's like, when there's nowhere in life that this isn't the case. So why do we think we're different? Why do we think that we don't have to be that? What is this thing about perfection or this certain? It confuses me in a way. But boy, there's pressure to be that.
There is, and I guess I don't know exactly where it comes from. I guess now we're always comparing ourselves to what we see somehow online, right?
Yeah,
So we're
yeah,
seeing so much more, and comparing ourselves to that. For one, I am tickled as I can be that I grew up way, way before the internet, and
yes. We're like,
because it's not infiltrated, like it could be if I was doing it since I was 10 years old or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that has been a huge problem. I really do. But what I love about you, Daryl, is when I read your book and just how incredible you in the book you talk about how tall you are, which you can't tell on the here, but you're like really tall, and you're a man. You're a manly man. You're a macho man, and yet in your book you're so incredibly vulnerable, and you talk about your tears, and on this podcast you talk about that, and I love that because I think more men need to see that from men. It's one thing for me as a woman because we're more allowed to be emotional or whatever. For you to speak up in the way that you do, in the vulnerability that you do as a manly macho man, I think it can and will have a huge impact, and certainly has had an impact on people who've read your book and listened to your podcast and been around you, to know that you can be macho, you can be strong, you can be courageous, and you can cry, and you can be vulnerable, and you can be messy, and you can be real. So, I thank you for that, because I would love to see, I tell my guys all the time when they're crying with me, I'm like, your audiences would appreciate this because they feel what you're feeling right now too, all the time. And if they could see that you, whom they admire so much, also feel this pain and also feel this vulnerability and this fear and this insecurity, man, they're going to love you even more, because they're going to think that maybe more is possible for them, because they see that this man that they admire so much is vulnerable and messy, just like them, just like me, just like me.
I love it. I really do. And thank you for saying that. That really, that hits me. It does. And it's wonderful that you said that. And I want to let men know, because I didn't, my dad was a tough dude,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was a tough dude. And it wasn't, crying wasn't not cool. That wasn't the thing to do. And over time I've learned that it's so cleansing and so healing and so allowed. It is so allowed.
And
We have to allow
necessary, Daryl.
ourselves. What's that?
It's necessary. I
It
believe
is
it's
necessary. It's
necessary.
absolutely necessary. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine, with everything that life has sort of had in store, and everybody has all kinds of stuff in store for them in life. And the longer you go, the more pain comes. And that's just what life is. And that's okay. Not that it doesn't suck, because it does suck.
Yeah.
But it's necessary. Just like you said, it's necessary to feel it. And anyway, we're running close to the end here, Carl. I swear I could talk to you for hours. I'm gonna have to get up to Asheville with my wife, and we'll hang out.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I would love that. But so, how do we find you? And I know there are people listening right now that would love you to work with them and coach them. And how do they find you?
Well, I guess the best way is probably my website, carlaroyal.com. And that's Carla with a C and Royal with no E. I don't know why people want to put an E on Royal, but so many people want to put an E. But it's carlaroyal.com is probably the best place. I am on LinkedIn. I am not a social media whatever. I don't know how to. I mean, I do post on LinkedIn, but it's, but anybody, who would like to have a conversation with me, I always offer a no cost conversation just to see if there's a connect in what's going on and if I can actually be helpful. I'm not for everybody, Daryl. I have a particular kind of way of working, and I don't want to waste people's time. And so I always offer, conversations before making a decision.
Very cool. Yeah, that's great. I love it. Your way is just calm and ease and sincerity and forthrightness, and I feel that. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I've enjoyed this immensely. We're going to have to do it again.
I would love to,
because I know there's a lot more for us to talk about, for sure. So
sounds like it. And I've enjoyed it so much, Daryl. Thank you so much. I appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. It's much needed.
Thank you.